Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to set up my bullet journal for June 2021, and I am also gonna show you how to create aesthetic bullet journal spreads, or how to make your bullet journal more aesthetic, if you can say so. I'm not an expert, or I haven't studied design or anything. This is just what I have learned on my journey, and it's what I think is aesthetic. Maybe it's not what you think looks like aesthetic, and that's completely fine. I'm just showing you my way to do it, and I'm going to show you how I choose colors, how I choose a theme, how I arrange my items and all that kind of stuff. But we will get to that soon. I also prepared a printable. It's in the description box. You can download it for free. It's a moon, nighttime, astronaut, planets, galaxy, moon, that kind of theme. You can check it out in the description box, and you can download it for free and use it for your bullet journal or anything else. Without further talking, let's get to it. To start out bullet journaling, you really just need a notebook and some pens and pencils. Believe me, in the beginning it doesn't really matter what kind of material you use and how good of a quality it is. You can build up a stationery addiction as you go, but also you need to kind of work with something in the beginning to get a feeling for what you really like. With notebooks you have a few options. You can go for a gridded one, a line one, a dotted one, or a blank one. I really enjoy dotted as most of the bullet journal community, because it's almost like a blank notebook but with a little more guidance. That's why I really like it. And the size is also another thing you should look at. I would recommend trying out different sizes. The most common sizes are A6, A5, and A4. A6 is very small. It's like half of my bullet journal. So A6 is half of A5, and A5 is half of A4. A6 is really small. It's like a really small pocket size. A5 is also small. It's like my bullet journal that I have, and it's also the most popular size among the bullet journal community. And then there's A4, which is kind of like the normal letter size, so it's big, double the size of my bullet journal, but it still fits into a backpack. You can go and try some of them out. I think you will have most of them at home from school or university. Secondly, I think having a good fine liner really helps. One that doesn't smudge when you go over it with markers or water is really important in my opinion. So I always use the STAEDTLER pigment liners, but there are a lot of other waterproof liners out there you could use. Make sure you buy pigment liners, because those will most definitely not smudge, at least after they have dried. And another thing that really helps me is, of course, color. So when I started up bullet journaling, I bought the Crayola Super Tips, I think they are called, and I'm still using them till this day. It's been a few years, and they are very affordable, extremely long lasting, and they have great quality in my opinion. Especially for bullet journaling, they are perfect. Your notebook and some basic pens and pencils is what you really need for bullet journaling. That's like the base of it. And after you start it out, you could go on top of that base and buy good fine liners or colorful markers like the Super Tips or the STAEDTLER pigment liners. Keep in mind pigment liners so they won't smudge. And then really optional is things like washi tape, stickers, and all that kind of stuff, additional brush pens, additional markers. These are things that you don't really need to make aesthetic bullet journal spreads, or to use a bullet journal in general. They can make things look prettier, but you really don't need them to make things look aesthetic. I am showing you now how I create my cover page, my monthly and my weekly for June, and also some additional pages. And the first thing I always do is think about a theme. The easiest way to decide on your theme is to just decide on like let's say one color, and then think about something that is in that color. Let's say you really like the color green. You could just make a houseplant theme, for example. I made one in the video up here. You should go watch it if you need some inspiration. And you could also go like, let's say for a frog theme or a forest theme, for example. Just hop onto Pinterest or any kind of, inspirational platform and type in your keyword and let yourself get inspired. I'm going to use my free printable, and the theme is going to be moon, stars. Let's say it's a nighttime theme. So the second thing I always do is sketch everything out before I start, like sketch the page out that I want to do before I do anything with liners, especially with my cover pages. I think all my anxious boys and girls can really relate, because if you take a pencil and you just start sketching, you can always erase it, and you don't have to fear the blank page, but you also start doing something. So because I know it can be intimidating to look at your journal and be like, what am I going to do? What if it's not perfect? What if I mess up and ruin my whole notebook? So don't be afraid. This is your bullet journal. Don't be afraid to mess up, because you eventually will mess up and you have to accept the fact that it happens sometimes. Just keep on going. After I sketched everything out, I will use my pigment liners to line everything out and make it nice and clean. And the third thing I do is color. So this is one of the most important rules I go by. To really create aesthetic spreads, you have to focus on three main colors. At least in my opinion you do. Let's say you want to create a floral theme. You could, for example, use 2 pink shades and a green, or a yellow, a red and a green. It really depends on what you want to do. And my pro tip to make your bullet journal look kind of consistent: inside your month, do your big headings always in one color and your subheadings in another. So if you go by this rule, you will see how organized it will look. The thing about the colors is why I say you should only use 3 colors is because if you only focus on a few colors, your eye won't get distracted as easily. Another thing I also personally really find aesthetic is to not use highly saturated colors like extremely bright red or extremely bright blue. These colors really pop out and it becomes like the focus of attention, and your eye automatically focuses on this saturated color. If you use them, make sure to only use one of them and then 2 not that saturated colors to combine it with. So I always go for pastel colors because I think they don't draw the attention that much, and I think they look so much prettier and more aesthetic. So I think you can't do anything wrong if you go for pastel colors, because I think highly saturated colors are a lot harder to combine. So I would always recommend go for not so high saturated colors or go for pastel colors. In my opinion, it looks so much more aesthetic. Another thing is to keep it simple. This is also something I learned the hard way. Okay, but what does keeping it simple really mean? It really depends on your style of bullet journaling, and this is of course personal preference, but I want to use my bullet journal to plan out my days, weeks, month, or my year, and for productivity. So, years ago I started drawing big drawings in my weeklies every week, and it took so much of my energy that I didn't have any left for actually planning my weeks. So that's why I decided to make my spreads, weeklies, and all that repetitive stuff really basic. In my case, this is basic. The only page where I draw a little is my cover page for the month, because I think that's something I can afford to do. And I also think keeping it basic is an easier way to make things aesthetic, because you don't have many elements to work with, but you have to figure that out for yourself. If you have the energy and the time to spend a lot of attention on your weeklies, that's also cool. Keep going. So let's move on to fonts. So to keep it simple but still make it aesthetic, I change up the fonts and headers. This has a big effect on the aesthetic in my opinion and on your whole spread. There's a lot of options from which you can choose. Now you can see some examples. Just by changing the font, you can change out like the whole look of the spread. And you can, like, for example, write out June in so many different ways. So this is like just some inspiration for you guys. And if you want to like look for fonts, you can also just go into Google or Pinterest or anything and type in like, I don't know, straight font or playful font and that kind of stuff, or comic font, and then you will get some examples, or just type in font, maybe you will also get some results. If you see something you like, you can just, you know, use that in your own bullet journal and try to letter something. By the way, if you're interested in a lettering video, let me know in the comments below, so maybe I can make another video for that. Another simple but yet effective way to make your spreads aesthetic is to try out different mediums. There are a lot of things you can try out, like watercolor, markers, washi tape, acrylic markers, paint, gouache, different kinds of paper, to make it more scrapbooky, stickers, or you could combine all of that, or you can combine some of that, like watercolor and acrylic markers, or watercolor washi tape. But that really depends on you. By trying out different mediums and styles, you will also figure out what works best for you. As I already said, I loved painting big watercolor paintings like in the past in my bullet journal. It was really fun, but that was like too high maintenance for me, so I stopped doing that. But I think watercolor is a really easy, also a beginner friendly option to you know, spice it up a little bit. And another thing I always do, which automatically elevates a page, is to get a light pastel color. I always use gray, but you can use whatever you want to. Like I would choose a very light color so it doesn't show that much. Is to draw every second column with a color, and you know, put a line like a column in it, and it looks so much more defined and organized. Also, something I always do is to use boxes around everything. I don't know why I always do this. I do this like a lot, but it separates the different sections, and it's again easier on the eye. And you can do this also in a lot of ways. Like you don't have to do like this kind of box, but if you draw like lines to separate the different sections from each other, it will be easier on the eye and look more aesthetic. So now we are kind of ready, and if you want a basic simple aesthetic, you should stop here. But if you're going like for a more cluttered aesthetic, you should definitely try to put some doodles or stickers in the empty places. I really love the look of combined mediums like scrap paper on the edges, some doodles in the empty spaces, and a few stickers. But again, depends on the aesthetic you want and aspire. So I am going to color a lot more and also put some washi tape in it. I don't always use washi tape, but sometimes I feel like it, so I use it. And this time I wanted to, you know, do a little cluttered aesthetic. There are some things I've learned from experience. The first thing is to just start doing it. I know it can be intimidating to stare at the blank page before you. Open up the dirty window. No, for real, I know how that feels. But what can possibly go wrong? That's a question I always ask myself when I get to this point, is what can possibly go wrong? What's the worst thing that can happen? Let's say you messed up a line or you wrote out something wrong. There are always ways to correct that, and even if there aren't any, it's okay. You're a human, nothing is perfect, and your bullet journal is not supposed to be either. You know, this is just my personal opinion on that, but I used to freak out about mistakes in general, also in my bullet journal, and it made everything so stressful instead of calming. You know, like, let's say you made a mistake. Okay, then cut out paper and stick it over it, or get your I don't know how you call this in English. It's like this white thing that you can put over spelling errors, this thing here, you know, just put it over it and get on with your life, because not doing anything at all will not make it better. So just start out and you can see how it works out as you go. Don't use stuff that does absolutely not work for you just because you think it looks cool or aesthetic, because you know what's the most disappointing thing when you look through your old bullet journals? Empty spaces, empty columns, empty habit trackers. To give you an example, I think these long habit tracker lists are so awesome, and I'd really like that to work for me. And I really tried like really hard for like almost 2 years, but it simply doesn't work for me. I tried so many times and I just can't keep up with it, and that's okay. So I only track like 2 to 4 things, like, you know, things I do on a daily basis, because I can really fill that thing up, and it brings me so much joy when I fill that box up. And you know, that's enough for me. I don't need that long habit tracker list, because I won't track it, you know. I won't track my habit. It will only make me feel bad that I didn't fill it up, so I won't do it. So really think about what works for you, and if something doesn't work for you, just cut it out. You don't need that in your bullet journal. And my last but really the most important tip is, don't compare yourself to others. This is your bullet journal, your creative or productive place. Do whatever works for you, and don't bring yourself down because in your twisted opinion other spreads look better. Your spread looks beautiful just like you, because you put time, effort and your spirit into that, and that's a beautiful thing. I read this quote online somewhere. It's comparison is the death of creativity, and although I forget it myself like a lot, like almost every day, you always have to keep that in mind, because doubting yourself is giving yourself not the chances that you really deserve. Okay, that was kind of deep, but I really mean it. So yeah, we're at the end of this video. I hope I could help you a little. If you have any further questions, please let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe to my channel, because it really helps me grow. And thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!